Honorable Chair, Senator Terzi, distinguished members of the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be here today to address the Senate of Italy on matters concerning the United Nations and the Middle East. And I am coming to you straight from the United Nations Human Rights Council, where I was engaged in various debates. And normally when I walk in there, Senator, I often get interrupted. I often get attacked. I was attacked last week verbally by Pakistan and Cuba, tried to interrupt me, tried to shut me down. So I very much appreciate being in your great democracy and this great institution to be able to speak freely about what is happening at the United Nations and what we as citizens who care about the world and who want the UN to work need to know about and need to be doing. So, the United Nations and the Middle East, what has been going on recently? We know, of course, that next week, the UN General Assembly will convene for their annual opening, and there will be one day devoted to the French and Saudi-led initiative for a two-state solution, which has been regarded by many as the resolution that was adopted as a reward for Hamas. Hamas launched a war on October 7th, and without any Palestinian reforms, Hamas is still in Gaza, and they recognize a Palestinian state. Mahmoud Abbas, the moderate Palestinian Authority, has been condemned repeatedly for engaging in Holocaust denial. He pays terrorists, the families of terrorists, after they commit terrorist acts, and he's in the 20th year of his 4-year term. And so the Canadian, the Australian Prime Minister said he promised us he will reform. But rather than wait to see any reforms, they are rushing to make this statement, which of course has no basis in international law. The PA does not meet the elements of international law. So this is really a political stunt. So that's the General Assembly next week. And of course, if we look at the General Assembly, these latest actions are not a huge surprise because it's part of a pattern. UN Watch will be releasing data this week, which we compiled over 10 years, from 2015 to 2025, and some of it is already on our website, the UN Watch database, and it counts how many resolutions have been adopted on the various countries. So if you look at some of the world's worst abusers of human rights, if you look at China, which has 1/5 of the world's population, 1.5 billion people who have zero freedom of speech, zero freedom of religion, zero freedom of assembly, 1 million Muslim Uyghurs are in camps. What has the General Assembly done on China? Zero. There has not been a single resolution adopted on China in the past 10 years, not crushing Buddhist temples in Tibet, extinguishing democracy in Hong Kong, rounding up human rights lawyers, throwing them in prison. Zero resolutions. The Cuban communist regime throws teenagers in prison, zero resolutions. Qatar has slave labor, zero resolutions. You go around the world, Turkey, Pakistan, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Libya, zero, zero, zero. A handful of countries get critical resolutions. There were, in 10 years, 9 on Myanmar, 12 on Syria, 10 on North Korea, 9 on Iran, and on Israel, 173. I'm going to say that again. 9 on Iran, 10 on North Korea, 173 resolutions on the tiny Jewish and democratic state, the only democracy in the Middle East. 173 one-sided resolutions which give a free pass to Hamas. This is the Parliament of the United Nations, and sadly, this is the outcome. So we need something different. And sadly, if we look at the United Nations, we can see that from the top, the Secretary General has given a very negative example. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted in wake of the Nazi atrocities, and it speaks of being adopted in response to barbarous acts which outraged the conscience of mankind. And when we saw on October 7th, once again, barbarous acts which outraged the conscience of mankind, how did the UN Secretary General respond? We know that just a few weeks after, he came to the UN and he said, yes, I condemn the attacks, but he said, the attacks did not happen in a vacuum. And he went on to enumerate one Palestinian grievance after another against Israel, in effect legitimizing, justifying what Hamas did. And this message went across the UN, sadly. And today I'm going to mention just a few institutions. One is the Human Rights Council. We'll mention one of their appointees, one of their commissions, and then UNRWA. So the Human Rights Council, where I was just speaking, and we'll be going back soon, they, as you know, every session have 1 day on the world and 1 day against Israel. No other country in the world has its own agenda item. Not North Korea, not Vladimir Putin bombing innocent people in Ukraine, not China oppressing 1.5 billion people. They do not have a special agenda item. Only the tiny country of Israel, special day, special agenda item to target. Under that agenda item, what did they do? Well, number one, they appointed a commission of inquiry. And who is the commission of inquiry? It's Navi Pillay. Actually, they appointed that under item 2, a generic agenda item. And who is the commission of Navi Pillay? You read the headlines. I was asked by your media. The commission found genocide. The commission this week found genocide. The one problem in the report, if you read it, is they forgot about Hamas. So Hamas is erased from the context. There is no war. There is no invasion killing 1,200 people, thousands of rockets against Israel, promises by Hamas to repeat October 7th. All of the military war context is erased. And so all you have is Israel bombing Gaza without saying that Hamas embedded hundreds of kilometers of terror tunnels underneath homes, hospitals, and schools where they still violate the Geneva Conventions and sacrifice their own children for what is a nihilistic death cult. Hamas is a nihilistic death cult. All of this is erased from the report, which is a sham. And they use a definition of intent for genocide, which does not exist, just to deliver a predetermined verdict. Was I shocked? No, because I was there when they appointed the commission in 2021. Who did they appoint? Navi Pillay, who famously, a month before she was appointed, blamed Israel for attacking Hamas in May 2021 when there was a war between Hamas and Israel. She pointed the finger only at Israel, and she lobbied countries to sanction apartheid Israel. She signed letters saying sanction apartheid Israel, arms embargo. She is the objective chief judge of this commission. It's a complete farce. It has the appearance of legal proceedings, but it is it has all the credibility of a Stalinist show trial, where there was a prosecutor, where there was a defense lawyer, where it was in a very nice room, but the verdict was delivered in advance. And that's what happened here. Not only Navi Pillay, who else is on her commission? Milun Kotari. Milun Kotari, a few years ago, said the Jewish lobby is controlling social media. He was condemned by Italy. He was condemned by France, Germany, Switzerland. 18 countries condemned him for anti-Semitism, including also the UN Secretary General and the President of the Human Rights Council. And he is one of the judges. He didn't resign. Now his term will be up in a month, but this is one of the judges. So much for the Commission of Inquiry. Who else has the Human Rights Council appointed? Someone who you know very well, was mentioned by Senator Terzi, Francesca Albanese, to become the Special Rapporteur. In her time as Special Rapporteur, as you know, she has used her UN mandate to justify Hamas. On October 7th, she wrote on her Twitter account, there's a context. You have to understand Hamas. So we have written to the UN to tell them a little bit about her history. We filed a complaint. She was supposed to be renewed in March. She was up for renewal. And we filed a complaint to the UN. It's this dossier called Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. It may have been mentioned before. 56 pages documenting her legitimization of terrorism, incitement to anti-Semitism. So, for example, you see her talking about the lobby hebraica. On October 7th, today's violence must be put in context. These are some of her actions. And of course, she tells Hamas, you have the right to resist. And you see the countries who have condemned her for anti-Semitism or Holocaust inversion. The United States, Canada, Netherlands, Argentina, Hungary, Israel, France, and Germany. Never in history has any UN rapporteur been condemned by France, Germany, Canada for anti-Semitism and Holocaust inversion. Only Francesca Albanese. So here you see the France saying that her remarks are scandalous, and you have Germany saying that her remarks are appalling. In addition, our report showed financial misconduct, which even a UN committee found. She accepted money from pro-Hamas groups to fly in Australia and New Zealand to lobby against Israel. And a UN committee agreed that she accepted money from pro-Hamas groups. She lied about it for 16 months. Okay, when we first, in November 2023, she went to Australia. We complained about it. Her host was the Australian Friends of Palestine, a group that praises Yahya Sinwar. You can see on your screen this organization praising the Hamas mastermind of terrorism for his incredibly moving remarks. That's the group that sponsored her trip. Other Hamas groups as well. New Zealand, also pro-Hamas groups, they sponsored her trip. We filed a complaint with the Secretary General. She said, no, it was paid by the UN. I had nothing to do with it, all paid by the UN, okay? In addition, she asked for money to speak. You're not supposed to take money if you are a UN official. She asked for money to speak, to be paid for her office. And we filed a complaint, and the UN said, when it comes to rapporteurs, the UN doesn't play any role, so they're not involved. Finally, an investigation was opened. Albanese said, I've never had anything to hide. I've never had anything to hide. And our report that we released in June, nothing to hide. Okay? Albanese says she has nothing to hide. Okay? She didn't take money from any other groups. I have nothing to hide. Well, as our report shows, for months she said, again, it was all funded by the UN. Finally, a coordination committee investigated her remarks, and even her best friends, okay, people who supported her, who attacked us, even this committee that attacked us, including this lady, Mofo Kang, the Special Rapporteur on Health, has attacked me, says Israel is evil. She is on the coordination committee who's judging Albanese. This is the one who's judging Albanese. He's attacked me numerous times, calling me evil. She's the UN Rapporteur on Health. Okay, this is what's happening at the UN. And we took all of this and all of the information, we submitted it to the UN. Okay, there's one resolution at the UN that deals with reappointment. It's called 8 PRST2. And you can read. It says, only if there are no objections does the reappointment happen. And here there were objections, numerous objections. We filed our 56-page dossier to the UN. The US government objected. Israel filed the letter, Argentina, Hungary, and others, US Congress, European Union lawmakers. Under the rules, this is the only resolution on reappointment. The President of the Council has to give the objections of her violations to the Council, and they have to take action. That's not what happened. The President decided to throw our complaints, United States Congress lawmakers, European Parliament, Israel, Hungary, Argentina, and others, he basically threw it in the garbage, and he gave it to the committee of her friends. He said, they will decide what to do with it. They will decide what to do with it. Here's the US objections. Here's the House Foreign Affairs Committee letter, all official objections. The Netherlands officially opposed her appointment, Hungary, Israel, Argentina. So they said that she was reappointed. But today we filed, it's on my Twitter account, on X. Today we filed a new report, memorandum of law, submitted to the United Nations Legal Council, submitted today. And this is a 21-page document that shows in detail how the United Nations Human Rights Council failed to respect their own core rules of how to deal with objections. There was never a vote to reappoint Albanese. There's no vote. No vote was ever held. They said there was no objections, but there were objections, and they're on file. So the United Nations Human Rights Council is violating its own core rule. So we've written to the UN today, to the Legal Council, to determine that Francesca Albanese, under law, was never reappointed. She is no longer a UN official. She enjoys no privileges and no immunities. She can be sanctioned, and she can be sued. And there is a lawsuit now in the United States suing her for defamation, and it argues exactly based on our information that she enjoys no diplomatic immunity anymore. So the case is clear. You can all go on my Twitter account on X and see the 21-page legal memo establishing exactly as I said, she no longer enjoys diplomatic immunity. Let me briefly walk you through a new report just released yesterday in the Bundestag, reported in La Stampa today, I believe, in La Stampa and also in Neue Zürcher Zeitung. Another report, 218 pages. This is Schools in the Grip of Terror, how Hamas captured the UNRWA education system. UNRWA is the UN agency that is supposed to help Palestinians. They run schools and clinics to supposedly help Palestinians. Our new report shows how, in fact, the teachers, the school principals, and the heads of the unions in Gaza and in Lebanon are funded by Hamas, are working for Hamas, are Hamas terror chiefs. Okay, it sounds radical. School principals, teachers, heads of the teachers' unions are Hamas terror chiefs. Let's take a look. Meet Suhail al-Hindi, 30 years at UNRWA, teacher, school principal, and union leader. Here he is giving an award to a student. Here he is signing a MOU, memorandum with the head of UNRWA in Gaza, major figure, leader of UNRWA in Gaza. Here he is with Pierre Krahenbuhl, who was the head of UNRWA, a Swiss. We often have a Swiss head of UNRWA. I'm from Switzerland. Now it's Philippe Lazzarini. It used to be Pierre Krahenbuhl. Now he's the director of the ICRC, the Red Cross in Geneva. And you see again, Suhail al-Hindi's meeting with Pierre Krahenbuhl, regularly meeting with him, and someone else. Suhail al-Hindi, I want you to see that picture. Suhail al-Hindi sitting next to his friend and colleague, Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind of the massacre of October 7th. It's not just his friend, they are colleagues, because Suhail al-Hindi is a member of the Hamas political bureau that runs Hamas. I'll say that again. The same man who's an UNRWA teacher, school principal, leader of 13,000 staff until 2017, but still, we will show, still running things, is today one of the leaders of Hamas. Okay? All of this is known to UNRWA. Everything I'm showing to you was known to UNRWA for decades. Okay? Here's Suhail al-Hindi inspecting a rocket, walking around Gaza. Okay? On the top, speaking for UNRWA. On the bottom, speaking for Hamas in his Hamas costume. Here he is next to Ismail Haniyeh. The UN was pressured to suspend him in 2011. Al-Hindi and Hamas organized mass protests. For months, they shut down thousands of schools, 220,000 students, 8,000 teachers rallied for this Hamas chief. The UN finally buckled in, and they gave him back the position. He was suspended only for a few months. He was there for another 6 years. Here's the team photo. Team photo, Suhail al-Hindi, Yahya Sinwar, and the other leaders of Hamas. About half of these people have been eliminated in the past 2 years, but Suhail al-Hindi is still one of the leaders of Hamas today. When this was raised in 2017, that he's on the Hamas Politburo, what was UNRWA's reaction? We asked Suhail al-Hindi, and he said, I don't know anything about it. February 2017, Chris Gunnis, UNRWA spokesman, I have nothing to do with this issue. And then he adds, UNRWA says, based on our due diligence, we asked him, and we could find no information to contradict what Suhail al-Hindi said. It has nothing to do with it. Media, go home, nothing to look at. But there was the team photo, and eventually they had to let him go. But he still continued to be at Hamas. Here's his retirement party. He's praised. What did he praise him for? The Arab Staff Union praises him for leading the march. He stood up against the inclusion of Holocaust education. So UNRWA is telling you, you members of the Senate, you members of the media, that they are better than the alternative because they are teaching UN values of human rights and peace. But the truth is that the leaders of UNRWA were fighting to stop Holocaust education, and he succeeded. And his friends, Hamas people, praised him for his heroic accomplishment of stopping Holocaust education. He was one of the leaders of the March of Return. This was to probe the fence in advance of October 7th. He was one of the leaders of the committee. He became openly Hamas. Here he is threatening to move children to the border, the place of a violent clash on the Israel-Hamas border. He said, I will move children of UNRWA there unless UNRWA does what we want. So again, a nihilistic death cult willing to sacrifice their children. He is the head of UNRWA education. We're preparing, this is a few months before October 7th, we're preparing for the major battle. And here he is just 2 weeks ago in Qatar, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi and Suhail al-Hindi. Officially no longer with UNRWA, but still very much running things. Our report shows these are his deputies, who are today the official leaders, but he is still running things, and these people are all still Hamas. Amir al-Mashal took over, he's Hamas, siphoned money from UNRWA to Hamas, his family are all Hamas, and the current head of the union, Mustafa al-Ghul, also closely linked with this network, and you see him in the picture with Hamas commander. So once again in Gaza, UNRWA teachers, school principals, union leaders, completely captured by Hamas. We are paying for it. Italy stopped funding UNRWA in Gaza, but let's look at what happens in other places like Lebanon. Meet Fathi Sharif. Now we're in Lebanon. Fathi Sharif is a teacher, a school principal, and leader of 2,000 teachers. Here you see him in his school in Lebanon. Here you see him as a union leader for UNRWA. Here you see him as a Hamas terror chief. Okay, he's in a picture with Ismail Haniyeh. Fathi Sharif, 1 year ago, was eliminated by an Israeli missile into his second floor window outside of the city of Tyre. And when he was eliminated the same day, September 30th, 2024, Hamas announced, "You killed our leader." Hamas said he was their leader. And then they released a video. This is from the video of him with Ismail Haniyeh. Okay, Hamas confirmed. Here's this picture. On the left, 2019, UNRWA gives him a certificate of appreciation. Who's in the picture? The former head of Amnesty International. The former head of Amnesty International, Claudio Cordone, who is the head of UNRWA in Lebanon, is handing appreciation to Fathi Sharif when everyone knew that he was a Hamas terror chief. Everyone knew. On the right is the poster when he was killed, that he was a Hamas martyr. UNRWA appreciation, martyr. I'll just be 2-3 minutes and then I'll conclude. Here is Fathi Sharif. This photo, we didn't hack it. It was on a community website in Lebanon. Fathi Sharif in the beige suit, next to Ahmed Yassin, the picture of the founder of Hamas, next to Jihad Taha, Hamas spokesman, at an event. Look at the child with the Hamas headband, grooming children to learn how to fight for Hamas terrorism and to kill Jews. Fathi Sharif, the head of 2,000 UNRWA teachers, this you're paying for in Italy. You are paying for UNRWA in Lebanon, you paid his salary. And all of these UNRWA people, you're paying the salaries. Here's Fathi Sharif on his website, pictures of terror chiefs, him with Abu Tariq. This is at his son's engagement party. All of the people in the front row are Hamas, Jihad, Al-Qaeda. Here he is holding the casket of a dead terrorist, celebrating Hamas terrorism. He's holding the casket. Here he is with Hamas bodyguards. This was from the video screenshot that Hamas put out. He walked around Gaza, in Lebanon, everyone knew he was the head of Hamas. He praised the resistance in front of UNRWA leaders. He posted his profile picture of his child wearing a school uniform with a rifle, liked by 82 people, UNRWA, UNRWA, UNRWA. Everyone saw it. He wasn't hiding. The UN said, how could we know? If someone is in undercover activity, how could we know? That's what Guterres' spokesman said. The opposite is true. He was hiding in plain sight. He wasn't hiding at all. This was on his public Facebook page. Okay, here he is bringing Hamas terror chiefs into the school. Here he is with children saying knife intifada to support stabbings of Jews in Jerusalem. Who took over? Ibrahim Meri, his disciple. Here's Philippe Lazzarini, the head of Hamas. The head of UNRWA, big mistake. Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, with the UNRWA people from Gaza, Amir al-Mashal, the UNRWA people from Lebanon, and they all have in common, they're all Hamas. So this was an UNRWA conference in Amman, Jordan, 2022. In effect, UNRWA paid for a Hamas conference for heads of Hamas in Lebanon, heads of Hamas in Gaza to meet, and this is a year before October 7th. You can imagine what they were planning. Ladies and gentlemen, our new report shows that the money that we are sending to UNRWA, whether it's to Jordan, Lebanon, UNRWA is in different places, is funding Palestinians to poison their minds, to try to destroy Israel, kill Jews, the opposite of what the UN claims they're doing. All of this was known. UNRWA did nothing. In the words of the Swiss Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis, so long as we are continuing to fund UNRWA, UNRWA is part of the problem, not part of the solution. We are only perpetuating the conflict, and it is a perverse logic. Grazie mille.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.